Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, to be part of this very important workshop you are holding here today. UNCTAD is the United Nations focal point on everything related to investment and development. Our vision is to help countries attract investment and benefit from it, and particularly now in light of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, attract investment and harness it for the SDGs. So how do we do that? We pursue our vision in UNCTAD through 3 pillars of activities. We do research, and I will be very pleased to talk to you today about one of our research products, UNCTAD's Global Action Menu on Investment Facilitation. Secondly, we do technical assistance. We work with developing countries on the ground and in terms of improving their policy environment. And thirdly, we are a forum for intergovernmental consensus building. We are the convening platform for countries to exchange views, share experiences, and basically build consensus on issues related to investment and sustainable development. So these are UNCTAD's 3 pillars of activities. We implement them with a range of partners. This includes partners in the UN family, like the regional commissions, like ESCAP, like UNECA or ECLAC. And I'm very happy to be here with you at the ESCAP hosted meeting. So what's the purpose of my presentation here today? We will have a presentation by UNCTAD on investment facilitation, and I'll be sharing my talk with my colleague Hamed El-Kadi. First, I will be talking a little bit about UNCTAD's Global Action Menu on Investment Facilitation, our key toolkit in that regard. And then Hamed will zoom into 3 important issues: defining investment, questions of capacity, and questions of policy coherence. And through both of us, myself and Hamed, we hope to give you a vision and to give you an idea about how to use investment facilitation for sustainable development. So I will be giving you some background about UNCTAD's Global Action Menu on or for investment facilitation. That's the UNCTAD toolkit on investment facilitation. Before doing so, and before talking about our Global Action Menu, which I hope is available with you in the room, let's take a step back and remember how important foreign direct investment is. That's undisputed. Everybody knows how important it is, particularly now in light of the SDGs. And UNCTAD already in 2014 calculated the investment gap for the SDGs. In 2014, we calculated $2.4 trillion annually for developing countries alone. That's the amount of FDI that is needed for countries to meet the SDGs. We did that calculation in our World Investment Report. That's our flagship report. And I encourage you all to go and look at the 2019 World Investment Report and see for your region, see for your country what the FDI situation is. You can find the information, for example, about developing Asia, but also about SIDS and other vulnerable economies. Let me point you to a second important publication that we just launched on that particular topic. That's our SDG Investment Trends Monitor. It was launched in the context of the United Nations General Assembly, and it traces and tracks directional FDI data in those sectors that are particularly important for the SDGs. So it basically tracks what has happened since 2014, when UNCTAD calculated the financing gap, and where do we stand now. And again, I encourage you to look at that publication and see now for those sectors that are particularly important for your economy, for your country, what the situation is. But leaving that behind, UNCTAD not only works on data, but we also work on policies. And we work on investment protection policies, investment promotion policies, investment liberalization policies, and we also work on investment facilitation policies. So there are different teams handling that, and the differences and the boundaries between these different areas of policies are not always evident, but today our zoom really is on investment facilitation. So what does investment facilitation mean? It basically means making it easier for business to conduct its operation, making it easier to do business. And we have, in 2016, in our Global Action Menu, compiled 10 action lines that can help it, countries can use if they wish to improve their policy environment and make it easier for companies to do business. Very important that the UNCTAD action menu, like any of the UNCTAD toolkits, is not a legally binding instrument. It is not a negotiated document. It is a toolkit with action lines, with options, that countries can pick and choose those options, those actions that they think are best suited for their particular situation. So it's a very flexible toolkit that gives you some guidance of what you can do, and you pick and choose those elements which you think are most useful and where you feel most confident in starting with. As I mentioned, the UNCTAD toolkit is also not a negotiated text. It has been developed by UNCTAD experts based on our expertise and experience of having worked on investment policy, investment facilitation for many years. And whenever we develop a toolkit, we then incorporate stakeholder feedback. We basically incorporate lessons learned by our beneficiaries and regularly update the toolkit. We update the toolkit and we monitor its implementation. And that you can basically have a look at if you look at the review of investment policy practices, where we match what countries have done with our Global Action Menu. Let us have a look at what exactly are the 10 action lines in the UNCTAD Global Action Menu for investment facilitation. And we can group them a little bit so that the different themes belong together. Action line 1, 2 and 3 are very much dealing with similar issues. So action line 1 is dealing with how to promote the accessibility and transparency in investment policies, regulations and procedures. So here, accessibility and transparency are the keywords. Action line 2 is related. It deals with predictability and consistency in the application of investment policies, rules and regulation. So here it's about predictability and consistency. And action line 3 again is related. It deals with efficiency in implementation, so that those rules and procedures that are transparent and that are predictable are also being applied in the most efficient way. So those are action lines 1, 2 and 3, and for each of them the UNCTAD action menu provides you with a series of very concrete things you as a policymaker can do to pursue these action lines. Action line 4 and action line 5 are also somewhat related. 4 is about building constructive stakeholder relationships. So that means relationships between officials and the private sector, between officials and civil society. It's about having a constructive and working relationship. Action line 5 is about identifying a lead agency. That can, for example, be an ombudsman. It is sort of identifying the place to which the investor can go if there are any concerns or if he wishes to raise an issue. So again, it's a little bit about interaction and working relationship. So that's how action line 4 and 5 belong together. Action line 6 is about monitoring and reviewing the implementation. So very importantly, in Global Action Menu, we usually don't talk about settling investment disputes, but we talk about monitoring, keeping track and documenting what is happening and what is the stage of implementation. And then action line 7 onwards are about international cooperation. So it's about enhancing and strengthening international cooperation through, for example, technical assistance and support, by working with partners in developing countries, and last not least, through international investment agreements. Now allow me to give you some examples about how UNCTAD works on the implementation of our Global Action Menu. And we have different products that we are using in our division to support the implementation of the Global Action Menu. One of them is UNCTAD's Investment Facilitation Compact. Here we have I-guides, e-regulations, e-registrations. These are programs where UNCTAD works with countries to set up the interface, to set up the, for example, electronic interface which countries can use to implement the action lines. We also have a peer group learning, that's GER, CO, where you can trace where your country is standing. Remember, I had the implementation and review as one of the action lines. And on GER.co, you can see where exactly your country is standing. We have UNCTAD's investment policy reviews. Those are studies conducted on behalf of and with individual countries, where we are looking at their investment climate and investment policy framework. And here we also review the implementation of the 10 action lines. UNCTAD cooperates with investment promotion agencies. We have a huge project that is dealing with investment promotion agencies, looking at their roles in the investment facilitation dimension. And last but not least, UNCTAD has a program on international investment agreements to foster and to protect investment. And also these agreements, for example, by including provisions on transparency, they have an investment facilitation dimension. And it is my colleague, Hamed El-Kadi, who will speak to you a little bit more about these international investment agreements and the very important issues of definition, capacity, and coherence that we need to address in these agreements in order to ensure that they are an efficient and useful tool for fostering investment in the Sustainable Development Goals. So with this, I turn the floor to my colleague Hamed El-Kadi, and I thank you for your attention, and I hope I have raised your interest in UNCTAD's work on investment for sustainable development. I hope I have made you curious to look up what are our sources of information, for example, the data in our World Investment Report, or what are our toolkits, for example, the Global Action Menu on Investment Facilitation, that you in Capital can use to do what you can do to attract investment and make sure your country benefits from it in the pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. With this, I turn over to my colleague Hamed El-Kadi.
Investment is important to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially quality investments. If we look at the policies implemented at the national and international levels concerning investment, we will see that most policies aim at either the promotion of investment or the protection of investment. The promotion of investment being policies implemented mostly at the national level, which include various kinds of incentives and aim at marketing the country as an ideal location for investment. Protection policies are available mostly at the international level through international investment treaties on the protection of investment. They include a wide range of provisions ensuring that the foreign investor and his investment are protected and treated fairly and equitably, and also gaining access to international arbitration. We see a gap, however, in terms of investment facilitation policies, especially at the international level, where facilitation policies are rarely included in international treaties. This is one point where there's a gap between what countries want to achieve in terms of attracting investment that contributes to sustainable development and the absence of specific investment facilitation measures, which remain mostly a national law, a national issue, where every country is adopting facilitation measures in accordance with their own interests and their own national development strategies. We are witnessing now an increasing discussions at the international level on investment facilitation for development, where countries, a number of countries, are gathering and meeting on a regular basis to discuss the possibility of having a binding multilateral treaty on investment facilitation. I would like to highlight a few aspects that are important in this respect. First is that facilitation discussions at the multilateral level so far have focused on the specific facilitation measures that investment facilitation should contribute to development. But one important aspect that needs to be addressed is the definition of investment. As a starting point to the discussions on investment facilitation, we would like to know what we mean by investment. I think this is extremely important to have a clear scope of what we are trying to facilitate, what kinds of assets, what kinds of business activities are going to benefit from the facilitation measures. Are we talking about any kind of asset, or are we talking about the kinds of investments that will contribute to economic development and the SDGs? It's very important to target or to facilitate, as a matter of priority, those investments that contribute to sustainable development, that contributes to economic development, and that have a positive impact on a country's development strategy. Negotiators or delegates can learn a great deal from what has been happening at the international investment agreements, where there was a clear shift in the definition of investment towards a more targeted, refined definition of investment, providing protection to those assets that contribute to economic development. In the past, the definition was so broad that it would cover any kind of asset, irrespective of its contribution to economic development or not. Today, the trend is towards more clarity, more refinements, more targeting, to ensure that what we are protecting is investments that have a contribution to economic development. So this can be used also in the discussions of investment facilitation, where effort should not be only at making business easier, but really at finding a win-win situation between making business easier, but also ensuring that business has a contribution to economic development, and not just kind of speculative kinds of investments or portfolio investments, or the kinds of investments that have minimal contribution to economic development. Of course, another important point is that as of today, most facilitation measures that countries are adopting, countries are very flexible in choosing the types of facilitation measures that suits them better and that they can fulfill. A binding multilateral agreement or commitments on investment facilitation will seriously limit the policy space available to countries in terms of implementing the investment facilitation measures that they see necessary for their in accordance with their needs. So instead of adopting measures that a country knows that it can adopt, it has the capacity to do so, some countries will find themselves required to adopt certain measures that maybe require more capacity than they have, for example. So from that point of view, it is extremely important to have a kind of special and differentiated treatment for least developed countries with flexible time frames for implementations, and also provisions on the technical assistance and capacity building. So these 2 points are extremely important, the problem of capacity and the problem of what is investment. We have an opportunity to ensure that investment facilitation discussions target those types of investment that are conducive to sustainable development through the definition of investment, to make sure that we are facilitating those investments that we need the most. My last point relates to policy coherence. The investment policy regime is a large and complex puzzle. It is composed of policies, investment promotion policies, investment protection policies, and investment facilitation policies. All these policies interact with other areas, such as industrial policies, environmental policies, labor policies, human rights policies. And so in this large puzzle, investment facilitation is only one component of it. And it is very important not to address investment facilitation in a silo and to ensure policy coherence between all aspects related to investment. That means that these policies should support each other, should be mutually supportive and coherent, and that also means that there's a need for interministerial consultations and discussions at the national level, where different bodies, governmental bodies in charge with investment, directly or indirectly, form a kind of a task force on investment policies. We often see ministries adopting regulations or policies that maybe contradict with the international obligations. So the teams negotiating free trade agreements would be different from the teams negotiating bilateral investment treaties, and those would be again different from the officials working on national investment policies and regulations. And so where would investment facilitation fit in that complex puzzle? Some countries have set up task force, interministerial task force, in an effort to ensure policy coherence, in an effort to ensure that attracting investment fits into the national development strategy. So UNCTAD is supportive of these efforts to ensure policy coherence, and we of course stand ready to continue helping developing countries in attracting investments that contribute to sustainable development. We have various policy tools available, such as the UNCTAD Investment Policy Framework for Sustainable Development and the UNCTAD Global Action Menu on Investment Facilitation. These tools are publicly available online, and they provide the policy options for governments to adapt and adopt in accordance with their country's development strategies. And we also stand ready to help in terms of technical assistance and capacity building through workshops, seminars on issues related to investment policies. Thank you very much, and I wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you.